for Arizona, ensuring that every K-12 student has access to a grade A level school. Sounds great, doesn't it? Every student deserves to go to an A level school. This is the motto for a new campaign called A for Arizona that was recently started by former State Superintendent of Public Instruction Lisa Graham Keegan, head of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce Glenn Hamer, and head of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Lea Marquez-Peterson. In a press release that the group recently released, here's what Glenn Hamer had to say about this new effort. Even as we emerge from one of the worst economic downturns since the Great Depression, I too often hear from employers around Arizona that they're having a difficult time finding qualified workers. Education is central to our state's ability to be ready for the economy of tomorrow. Here's what Lea Marquez-Peterson of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber had to say. Every school in every corner of the state, regardless of socioeconomic conditions, is capable of providing its students an outstanding education. As business leaders, we need to support work that brings or grows more A seats for our communities. And from Ms. Graham Keegan, Arizona will be better positioned to win the jobs of tomorrow when all of our schools are defined by academic rigor, high standards, and are producing graduates who are college and career ready. Doesn't it sound great and so easy? Who would be against A for Arizona? Well, the devil is in the details, as always. But before we get to the details of their campaign, there are a few things you should know about this trio. Keegan, of course, has been around for a long time. She is the one who rolled out the entry of charter schools in Arizona, as well as the high-stakes and very flawed Ames test. She left her elected position in Arizona midterm in 2006 to take a job in Washington, D.C. with a Bush administration-associated organization called the Education Leadership Council. It was a job she was forced to leave after several years when the Inspector General's Office of the Department of Education found financial irregularities. Since then, she has not held elected office in Arizona or held another major national office. Next, we come to Glenn Hamer. Mr. Hamer's background is not in education. Like Keegan, it's in the political realm. He is a political operative who has worked for former Senator Jon Kyl and was the director of the Arizona Republican Party. He recently got into trouble for misusing Arizona Chamber PAC funds without permission from the board to oppose the solar industry. Finally, we have Ms. Marquez-Peterson, head of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Again, no background in education. Before taking her current job, Ms. Marquez-Peterson ran several gas stations, but had to file for bankruptcy when her businesses did not succeed. She also is very involved in the political realm and is currently serving on the team of gubernatorial candidate Doug Ducey, along with former Senator Jon Kyl. So we have three individuals with very strong political ties now claiming to have the best interests of students and teachers and parents at heart. Is that really what's at play here? One other thing to mention about all three of these individuals and gubernatorial candidate Doug Ducey is that they all worked against Proposition 204, which would have restored funding to K-12 in Arizona, which suffered the deepest cuts to education in the country, as we've mentioned, and would have protected that funding from legislative raids. Glenn Hamer ran the opposition out of his offices in Phoenix. He serves on the board of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber that led that group's opposition with Ms. Marquez-Peterson's assistance. Lisa Graham Keegan, who was unsuccessful in getting her voucher plan placed on the ballot, also worked against Prop 204. So, they're not in favor of investing in education. They've made that quite clear. They are in favor of rigor and high standards, evidently to be achieved at the same time that Governor Brewer and the Arizona legislature have effectively starved our schools. So, how will A schools be achieved? Well, here's that devil in the details. Number one, this is from their press release. All parents must be aware of their child's school letter grade at the time of enrollment. Now, that information is already public, so not sure how that's going to make a difference, but okay. Number two, ensure Arizona's best teachers are well compensated, making Arizona attractive to top-notch teachers across the country. Arizona's best teachers. Those are presumably the teachers at the A schools. Now, what do we know about the A schools is that they tend to be in wealthier areas. So are we going to pay teachers more to teach in wealthy areas? Not sure how that is actually going to help. And then here's the doozy. Make empty district school buildings available to high-performing charter or district schools. So here we go. Under the guise of providing A schools to everyone, we see what's actually going on here, a power and property grab by the charter school profitizers. Problem number one with this plan. First of all, district schools cannot rent or buy buildings in another school district because we have a thing called district boundary lines. And so do we really envision a world where the Flagstaff School District is now operating schools in Yuma? I don't think so. So let's just be clear, this is not really about expanding district schools, which makes no logical sense. It's about rationalizing turning over closed down or underutilized parts of school buildings to charter schools, under the guise of making every school an A school. And of course, quite conveniently, there happens to be legislation right now, Senate Bill 1100, sponsored by Senate Education Chair Kimberly Yee, that would require school districts to lease or sell closed or underutilized parts of buildings to charter or private schools. According to that legislation, if a district building was unused during the 2012-2013 school year, or if it was operating at 50% or less capacity in 2011 to 2012 and 2012 to 2013, the school district must make the unused school building available for lease or sale to charter schools and private schools. If the school district does not receive a bid or enter into an agreement with a charter or a private school within a year of the building becoming vacant, the school district must sell the building to the highest bidder, according to this legislation. So this plan has a lot of problems. First of all, if the district plans to sell a building, the highest bidder may not be a charter or private school. So let's assume this scenario for a moment. A school district could sell a vacant school building to a housing developer for $5 million. But by this law, it's required to sell that building to a charter school or a private school that's only willing to pay $500,000. Under this law, the school district would be required to sell the school at the lower price to the charter or private school. Now, let's also remember, these buildings were bought with public taxpayer dollars. So if they're going to be sold, taxpayers should be able to receive the highest return on that investment. Let's also remember that charter school operators, if they shut down a school they operate, or if the state shuts it down, the owners are able to keep that property as their own personal property. So we're now looking at a prospect where a district could be forced to sell public property to a charter operator at below market value, and that charter operator could then turn around, close the school, and sell it for a profit to the highest bidder. Do you see a problem here? Who stands to benefit? The taxpayers? School children? No. It's the school profiteers, pushing legislation through to benefit their industries and themselves. Also, there are districts that may have closed schools but are repurposing them. Under this legislation, if a school was not operating in 2012-2013, it must be sold to the charter or private school operators, even if it was repurposed during the 2013-2014 current school year. You'll note there's no requirement that the purchasing charter be an A charter. In fact, you could have an F charter being allowed to purchase a building in an A school district under this legislation. An additional problem is that school districts must educate all children within their boundaries. They don't get to pick and choose. Often in areas, there will be a dip in demographics as neighborhoods age. School populations in those areas may decline for a while and then boom later. If districts are required to sell off property when it is vacant, but they need to keep it for population fluctuations, what are they supposed to do? This proposal really doesn't make any sense, and the only thing it helps make clear is how dead set some members of the legislature are as well as Ms. Keegan, Mr. Hamer, and Ms. Marquez-Peterson on privatizing our schools and turning them over to profiteers. I would just have to ask some of the businesses who belong to these chambers whether this is really what they favor or whether they are just letting their directors run rogue. Bank of America, Southwest Gas, TEP, Cox Communications, Southwest Airlines. What's your answer?